Alright guys, so for today's gameplay commentary video, I'm going to be trying this weird little Whitebeard deck that I've been cooking up. So the reason I say it's a little weird because it's a mixture of both the Straw Hats and the Whitebeard Pirates. I mostly did this because after my experience in Peoria, I just noticed that the games that I was losing was the games I just didn't see the top end of the deck. And I honestly, the Straw Hat variant or the need for Nami and the Straw Hats is mostly there as like a defensive tool. Nami always wanted me to, I wanted her to search always a 2k counter, a Radical Beam, or potentially a 5-drop Luffy, right? That's her main purpose in life. But the real finishers in the Whitebeard or the Strawbeard deck were the Whitebeard Pirates, right? Were the 9-drop, were the Marcos, were the Aces. So I really wanted to make use of them by playing the Moby Dick and having that as a secondary backup plan. And as you can see here, I start off with a really great start. I start off with Nami and both the Whitebeard Pirates Searcher card, which is able to get me the next, play that I'm going to make, which is the Atmos. I'm going to swing before I summon the Atmos here. I will be summoning him, going to use my mana or Dawn efficiently. But definitely want to swing first just in case I hit like a Punk Gibson or something. Just in general, probably it's just a good practice. With an O-Kiku on board though, this Atmos is pretty threatened, right? Because if my opponent here, the Kine'mon, just goes ahead and attaches the Dawn and then, fully commits to attacking the Atmos, I either have to drop 2 cards in my hand or, lose the Atmos, which may or may not be the case here. So yeah, he will be swinging 6k at my leader. By swinging the 6k, he does trigger a response here. I have the 9-drop in my hand. I did take the previous hit. So by taking the previous hit, I now have to defend until my 9-drop turn. And then he's able to just go ahead and swing at this Atmos. Now I'm going to need the cards in my hand to defend to allow me to get to the 9-drop turn. So I definitely can't just afford to lose 2 cards, because if I do lose 2 cards now and he just turns on the aggression, I'm going to be on the, on the back end. So I'm going to go ahead and play another Whitebeard's Pirates Searcher card. That's going to go ahead and find me Marco. Now Marco was one of the cards that I was really pleasantly surprised in. I was playing it in the deck when I was playing for the regional in Peoria, and Marco really just showed up. In the mirror match, if I do whiff on the 9-drop Whitebeard, just being a 5k blocker is oftentimes more than enough to give me a turn to catch up to them, right? Because if I go 9-drop, they go 9-drop, I don't have a 9-drop, and they have another 9-drop, I'm in a really tough spot. So I'm going to go ahead and swing at the O-Kiku. He's going to block with the Veggie, and I'm going to go ahead and play by Marco. Regardless of how much Dawn I put under my leader, the O-Kiku was always going to get blocked by Veggie, right? Because he's going to be going to 7, which will allow him to go Kine'mon ability and summon Odin on curve, which is exactly what my opponent's plan was. And it's a really tough position to be in for me as the Whitebeard player. So I maybe should have tried to commit my Dawn differently that turn, but I definitely have to get a Marco down to go ahead and just stall me a little bit till I get to my 9-drop. So this is the turn where Whitebeard kind of has like a pause. So they have a really solid like 2, 4, 6. The 8 turn, they either ace you, but if there's nothing to ace here, such as in this situation here, then ace really can't come down, and you just kind of have to wait a turn. So I'm going to go ahead and play another Marco and then follow it up with a Moby Dick, right? Just get my cards out early, so when I go into these final turns, I should be in a very strong position. Whitebeard is going to go take me down all the way down to 1 life, and then I'm going to try to stay in 1 life as much as possible. You'll be able to see the synergy between both the boat and the 9-drop at the same time. That card with the Moby Dick active makes your leader a 10k, which is a really large leader swing, as well as having him swing for 12 is a huge deal. So he's going to go ahead and swing with O-Kiku at my leader. I'm going to have to defend it. Swings 5 at the Marco. Now Marco is going to have to pitch a card here to stay alive, because this card is just way too valuable. I'm going to go ahead and pitch a Blenheim, which may or may not have been a great choice, as Blenheim is a really solid blocker, and seeing the Odin on the board early is, I might have to need, I might just need some extra time, and that Blenheim pitch may have not been it. But we'll see if it comes and gets me later on down the line. He's going to go ahead and swing Odin at my leader, which that's just a quick Radical Beam away, 8 to exactly 6. Probably fine. It's also within guard point range, so as long as I kept a Dawn up, which I did here, should be able to get out of that one pretty easily. And then my opponent still has 8 total Dawn to work with, and he can drop an 8-drop here, or he goes and plays the X-Ray. Now X-Ray's pretty solid. It's gonna remove a card from my hand, but by me removing a Whitebeard, that's not really great unless I go ahead and just hard draw another one. I believe I have 2 in my hand at this point. I don't think I can effectively summon Whitebeard into Whitebeard this game, so I was a little bit afraid. I do top deck an ace, which is pretty solid, especially into a board like this But this has to be a Whitebeard turn, right? I have the Moby Dick active. I just have to make full use of summoning this big boss monster. I get to leave one Dawn up, which is also really, really nice. And then I'm thinking to myself what I do from this standpoint. I'm going to go ahead and attach my Dawn here and swing at the leader. Regardless of where I swing it once again, the Toki would have just blocked regardless. I'm swinging for 11 at this point in time, which is, you know, he has the Punk, or he's presenting Punk with his Dawn. And honestly, if it was up to me, I would have just taken the hit. But he is afraid that if he won't be able to last one more turn. I don't really think he has many more blockers in his hand. But at the same time, I don't necessarily think that Kine'mon has many counter power cards. So if he goes ahead and takes that hit, and he's not able to create a blocker for next turn, then he's going to be in a world of trouble. So he's going to go ahead and swing at the Marco, tap my other Marco. And then here's where I kind of make a little bit of an oopsie. And in this scenario, I may have overvalued my Marcos and may have tried to make them live a little too much. Go ahead and I pitch a 2K as Marco, you know, just quick defense. He's going to go swing with the Kine'mon. I think I pitched the ace here, but I may have needed the ace for the following turn. I also have, you know, my hand isn't very large. I've had to defend many, many hits at this point in time. He's hit me for 6 pretty consistently. He's going to go ahead and swing the X-Drake in. And then, I mean, he has a bit more Dawn here to work with. I go ahead and pitch a 2K. I'm down to 2 cards in hand, which is super spooky, right? Because my opponent just puts all 2 Dawn onto the Odin and goes 10-10. I'm going to have to need like a 2K plus a card to get out of it, which I don't have at this point in time. And I think, you know, that kind of messes up my play. So I take that back and I say, you know what, I can't really save it. And since this is a friendly, it's perfectly fine. But in hindsight, I should have kept that decision of keeping the Marco in play. And then he goes 10 at my lead. And I don't defend this. I definitely take this because I'm out of Whitebeards at this point in time. And then let's see where he goes and restands the Odin. I'm confused on why he didn't declare an attack with the Odin here. If he swings with the Odin and I, you know, swing at the Odin on the back step, then I don't necessarily think I'm in a good position because it turns his 5K leader into an 8K. If you think about it, right, it kind of becomes a Eustace Captain Kid in a sorts, and that's just not the way to go about it. So I definitely, the big mistakes from this game or the big takeaways are just the way that I defended, the way that I used my hand size. My resource management was just not on point, right? There was definitely a couple cards that I over-countered and definitely a couple cards that I, you know, just didn't counter enough in. So losing the Blenheim, not great. Losing a 9-drop was also not great. So once again, maybe, although Marco is a great card, I should have just sometimes just let it go. Kept cards in hand, and like, even though he is a blocker, I could have theoretically, versus green specifically, he isn't as good because it just gets tapped equally as a Blenheim. So I probably should have let him go, summoned the Blenheim, and then also done a 9-drop as well. Try to just summon, instead of pitching those cards, summon them over the course of a couple turns and then get through that and keep cards in hand, definitely. So I did top deck an ace, which is going to go ahead and let me like pseudo clear the board. The issue is, since the Odin is restood, which again, it's a really bizarre play, it puts me in a difficult spot. Even if I could go ahead and clear this board efficiently, which I can't because I already swung with the Marco. But we're just kind of like debating here what I could have, you know, potentially done. But at the end of the day, it doesn't really matter. The fact that Odin is on the board and I have no blockers and even one Dawn up is just not going to be it, because I'm going to have to deal with Odin swinging twice at a ridiculously high number. I think it's like 15-15. And yeah, that'll be the end of game 1. We're going to go into a game 2. Usually Whitebeard games go pretty quickly. So he starts off again with a Momo. He goes first. I go Nami into Whitebeard Pirates. And unfortunately, you know, the ordering could leave something to be desired. But, I mean, Nami still finds me a really strong card. And then I go ahead and passive take a damage. So the double draw effect of Whitebeard has really just, in my experience, made the leader just way too strong. The fact that a red deck, which is a very aggressive color, can consistently draw 2 cards per turn and has access to some of the best removal, best satted cards, is really just led to a spooky time for us in the meta here. for the One Piece TCG. So he's going to go ahead and play the Momo. Momo's going to go ahead and have to find him a Wano Country card. I did see that he had like a Law and a what seemed to be a Basil, but I don't think he's playing Basil. I'm going to go ahead and add the Okiku to his hand, probably swing with the Raizo, so he gets to draw 3 cards this turn. Really, really nice. But once again, Kine'mon with cards is just kind of fake, and you should theoretically just hit them in the face as much as you can, especially with Whitebeard. So he's going to go ahead and deploy the Okiku as well as a Veggie. Going to go use this Nami for her main purpose, which is to KO the Momo. I swing at the Raizo, which is something that I could have ignored and then gone face for 6 and then face for 6 while leaving 1 Dawn up. Now this is a pretty solid curve. This is kind of exactly what you want to see. Usually the Strawbeard version does this exact same play, except the 4-drop is like a Luffy or a Frankie. That's just the way that they curve out. I will be going to my, the weird turn on the next one, the 8th turn. He goes Kine'mon at my Nami for sure, and then he plays down an Odin. Now the Okiku just standing there menacingly is kind of scary because I don't have a way of interacting with it, and even if I go ahead and do set up some blockers, I don't want to take some damage on the following turn residually. So if he wants, right, because in this turn I'm going to go ahead and take a life, and then after which I'm going to have to go down to like 1. If he hits me for that 1, then I can't play the Whitebeard, and so he places the Odin down in a really strategic position that allows him to go ahead and play very, very aggressively. And you'll see what I mean right here. So I go ahead and I swing, he counters, 7, he takes, and then I think I play a Thatch here and leave a Dawn up, right? Because I have, and unfortunately I do hit this Paradise Waterfall. The Paradise Waterfall does knock out a rested 4-drop or lower, which is exactly at most, probably the most value Paradise Waterfall has ever gotten in life. Taking out a 6k is a huge deal. And then I'll just summon the Thatch and pass, right? Thatch is going to be able to contest his really big cards, and he's just like a little bit cheaper. With the Moby Dick, he's a 10k off rip, which is really, really nice. And the fact that I put him in my deck as opposed to the King Do, because I just noticed that when you're playing the mirror and the opponent plays in the 9-drop and they go exactly to 8, King Do taxes you a Dawn to attack, whereas Thatch, you can put 2 and then obviously trigger interaction. So he's going to go ahead and swing at my Luffy, try to rest the Thatch, but Thatch is just a little too large in the cost department for that to happen. And like I said here, so I'm down to 1 life. I'm going to 10 Dawn next turn, so I don't want to take this life, so I can go ahead and play my 9-drop. But at the same time, if my opponent were to go ahead and say like Odin, there's very little that I can do to that. And there's something important to note as well. You do want to go evens to evens and odds to odds. I know, a couple seconds ago I said if my opponent just went 15 to my 8, I'd be in a tough spot, or my 6, but usually you want to go like 14 and then 1 on lead it, right? Because the same amount of Dawn, or the same amount of counter power, will be used in both scenarios, so you'll be able to rip another card if you go on evens as opposed to odds, right? And you see that very often. If your leader's a 5k and you hit with 6, they just 2k it, but if you hit him with 7, that's always 2 cards or an event. He goes ahead and attacks Odin at my Luffy, and then I just don't defend him here, which may be a little troublesome for me. I didn't want to go ahead and spend a Radical Beam, as I do see this game going very, very long, or at least like 3 more turns. He goes ahead and plays a 8-drop Eustace Captain Kid, which is going to go ahead and summon a Toki, and then he just plays a killer as well. Or summons the killer and then he plays the Toki. It's the same. I go to my 10 Dawn, and then even though the Eustace Captain Kid doesn't have a Dawn attached to it, it's still very menacing because of the fact that if I do swing at his life and I give him 2 additional cards, then he may just inherently be able to defend him, especially with this army of blockers that he can amass, and in doing so, I may not be able to get through it, and then he gets a couple turns of Odining me in the face, and then I may just lose immediately on the spot. Now I have a couple Whitebeards in my hand, and I do think that that's going to be my main condition. My main win condition is Whitebeard or Whitebeard. And there's very little cards in the Kine'mon player's hand, so I think I have to just kind of stall him out for a couple turns. It's interesting that he's playing the Eustace Captain Kid. I do see sometimes Kine'mon players doing it. I'm not necessarily sure why, but it's cute. The card's really strong. Since black is like sort of kind of getting pushed out of the meta by red, Eustace Captain Kid kind of sneaks on back into the meta. And we have all, even though we've gotten the nice little breath of fresh air that is not playing as a drop kid, he is still a ridiculously oppressive card in some specific matchups. Flamingo. So let's see how he wants to allocate his Dawn this turn. But yeah, I think this is a turn where I make like another large mistake. And then this is the main point of these gameplay commentary videos, because as you're seeing these games, by the way, not that this is an excuse, but playing these games at like 2, 3 in the morning is sometimes not the play, right? So he goes ahead and swings 10k at what I believe is my Thatch, because if you're going to swing, it's kind of equivalent at this point in time. I do ditch a Nami here, which I'm not a fan of, because Nami, again, is a very defensive card, can go ahead and add Radical Beams and whatnot to my hand, and I just want to summon her, but I didn't have another 1k in my hand, and I don't like over comboing in scenarios like this where I'm under a lot of pressure. It's going to go ahead and swing at my lead for what is a Radical Beam and a 2k, and so I show him the Radical Beam 2k, and then he goes and clears the Thatch, right? To be able to defend this Thatch, I'm going to have to remove 3 2ks from my hand, and I just don't think I can afford to do that. Passes it back to me, and then I'm going to, even if like I wanted to, those 2 blockers are going to destroy me, right? So he has 2 cards in hand, which is exactly 10k. So that's going to trigger a blocker. Even if I went ahead and attached 2 Dawn, he would still have the blocker for it. And if I attach 2 Dawn, I'm not really doing much with the rest of my turn. So I go ahead and I decide to swing another, 9 at the lead. Again, Kine'mon not having many counter cards in the deck, I don't believe he can swing like a 2k at this point in time. He's used a lot of 2k, so 9 is equivalent to 10, and therefore he does have to block as well. And now I have 2 Whitebeards on the board, and that should probably be enough to wrap this game up. He is at 2 life. If I am able to get through this Eustace, then definitely I can just defend myself for days. So this is a turn where, again, I probably messed this one up. I find in hindsight, this is a turn where I remember, I don't exactly know how I messed this one up, but I remember this part of the game, and I think I remember him declaring his attacks in a way that, as soon as they resolved, I'm like, oh, I'd lost the game. Very, very solid. So he's thinking of how he wants to go ahead and allocate the Dawn here, as this is a pretty pivotal turn. He has to defend the Eustace while also applying pressure, while also keeping the Odin in a, offensive or defensive position. There is an Okiko on the board, which will most probably not attack me, as I'm at 8k my leader this turn. Also very important, guys, if you do plan on playing any sort of 9-drop in your deck, don't forget to declare the effect, because bad things may happen. So he just goes base 8 at my lead, and base 8, I probably should have just taken it to see what he goes and does. I'm just afraid of him like really committing here. I don't have any active Dawn, and if he's able to just eat through my hand, then I'm going to be in a tough spot. So I shouldn't have taken the secondary 8. That was my mistake here, because I'm going to go down to 0 anyways at the end of my turn. I wasn't also expecting the full commit on the Eustace onto my Whitebeard, so I go ahead and I super duper combo out of that. That card was always going to get saved no matter what. The issue on my turn was saving the second swing. I guess it was just such a light tap from the Odin that it just baited me into like wanting to defend it. But if I had just a bonus 2k at the end of this game, you'll notice how big of a difference that's going to be. So I'm going to go ahead and swing, I believe. I mean, there's no reason not to attach Dawn. Once again, my hand isn't really doing anything. An ace here would be a godsend. An ace would be amazing, but we don't have one. So let's use our Dawn in an efficient manner to go ahead and make sure that we can close this one out. So I'll go 10. He was able to save it with the first 10, but not the secondary 10. And if he's not able to save it with the secondary, then I just swing here. The issue is, why am I floating like 6 Dawn? Super unnecessary. So he summons Okiko at the end of it, and now 3 attackers next turn is going to be kind of troublesome for me to deal with. The only way I can really win this game is if the last life is a Radical Beam, or like a guard point or something along those lines, and I do believe it was a Radical Beam. The issue is, since I did over combo a 2k, I am going to lose specifically by over comboing that 2k. You'll see it right here. In this situation with very limited cards in hand, he asked me exactly how many cards in hand. I have 4. So if you just go ahead and make me pitch 2, and unless I have double event spell in my hand, there's no way for me to get out of this, right? So he goes 8. If I go like guard point here, then he goes 8 again, and I go Radical Beam, and then he goes 9, and I go double 2k. Well, sure, 4 cards does get me out of that, but I don't have double event, so I'm trying to think of like how to combo this. Do I play the Rad Beam, or do I just play double 2k? So I go double 2k. He swings 8 again. I go Rad Beam, and then if the last card in my hand is like a Rad Beam, then I'm out of it. But had it been a 2k, I also would equally be out of that situation. So by me dropping that 2k on the previous turn on the Odin swing, you know, immediately lost me the game. So I hope you guys like this sort of video. Back to the gameplay commentary, back to seeing the roots of the channel and kind of just trying to get better at the card game. I know I make a lot of misplays here, but that's exactly what these are for. Just kind of see the mistakes that you make in specific matchups. And I don't know, I guess I just have a debuff when I play my buddy Diego. I just start playing significantly worse. Alright guys, so if you like this sort of content, make sure to leave a like. If you have any more sections of the video that you wanted to really dissect in the comment section, or like mistakes that you noticed, things that you would have done differently, let me know in the comment section, as I'm always trying to like improve for myself and for the community as well. And as always, if you're enjoying this type of content and would like to consider subscribing to the channel, that'd be pretty darn cool. And I'll see y'all on the next one. Peace.